Wanted a day at the beach, and today we got one. This trip is to North Beach, Fort DeSoto. I recommend you pull in and go to Shelter 9. You take a right at the flagpole, go around the bend past the fort. The first sign that says North Beach, pull into that lot and park at the first shelter, Shelter 9, because behind Shelter 9 is a entrance to one of the two tide pools that we're going to look at. The tide pool, you'll go through the dunes, and the tide pool is a large, mainly isolated saltwater, almost lake, big saltwater pond. It gets surges only during the highest tide, but it's very big. It's got some seagrass. It's got some, it's big. It's got nice fish. I've seen sharks in there even, but mostly mullet jump, trout. Caught a few specks in there, some ladyfish, a couple of flatties, the flounders, a little bit of salt marsh around it. A lot of times you'll get blue-green bacteria or purple sulfur bacteria growing. There's a little auger nursery at the west end of the tide pool. So it's a cute little place to enter and study a little tide pool and have like a mini beach, different sediment. It's a good place to pop in and then head to the beach that way. This is a shot from the second tide pool that we'll be visiting. What you do is you hit the beach and you proceed down the beach. You'll run into a patch with an inlet. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's full, and you can see that there's a lot of dead mangroves, and then there's that one mangrove. You can also see in the foreground a little bit of spartina, a little salt marsh grass. This changes after every major storm. This used to be a full mangrove swamp, then it was totally dead and dry, then it was carved out again. So this is kind of a very dynamic ecosystem, and you never really know what you're gonna get. Here we have a partial mangrove, a little bit of salt marsh, and a mud flat in this tide pool. Our dunes at Fort DeSoto are nice and thick. You can see some of the dune plants. Left you have your little scrub dune area, a lot of sea oats holding the dunes in place. You also see a few of the palms and palmettos up front, and in the back you see a tree without branches that was killed and removed. That is Australian pine. You see a lot of the beach sunflower in the center picture with little palm, some Florida holly or Brazilian pepper, and then low left you have your seaside purslane growing, and the sunflower, and of course a male fiddler wrapping things up. In the tide pool, a little bit of purslane, and you see the red mangroves making a go. They're not going to make it. That's not really suited to their habitat, but they're trying to colonize it. You know, it changes every time a storm comes through, so the dynamics may change to make it a better mangrove habitat. But those right there are probably not gonna find their way to red mangrove. We also have a little auger. You'll notice along the edge of the tide pool, you may find hundreds, you may find thousands of these little snails because that's their habitat. They're quite prodigious there. Walking through the tide. Oh, there they are on the bottom left. Walking through the tide pool, you see a variety of things. Banded tulip, a lot of the shells, very shelly beach. Some crabs running around in the tide pool, pelicans fishing. You can see in the background there's the Gulf, and in the foreground there's the tide pool. You can see the rim of the purple bacteria around the tide pool. So it's a great place to enter and study the beach. Between the tide pool and the beach, you'll see some rough grass, some scrub, things trying to take hold. But it's a pretty harsh environment, so not much makes it to maturity there. On the beach, comb the beach for mollusks, the shells. Sunray Venus, bay scallop are two right there. You also have a lot of coquina, living and non-living. The calico scallop is smaller than the bay scallop, pretty colorful. It's more of a little deeper water species, but very abundant. The ears on the scallop, the lower part, the ears. You see a slipper snail is kind of cool. They live the life of a bivalve. Bivalve, two-part shell, gastropod, one-part shell. They stack one on top of each other. So the bottom, whatever's below them, is the lower, they use as the lower part, and the top is the upper part. And they are sexless until they make a stack, and then they alternate male-female. So they're hermaphroditic. They have the potential for both sexes. You got Cardita, crossbar Venus, incongruous arc. A lot of these bivalves washed up on the beach. Make note of what you have. That's why you bought a field guide. And remember, in the orientation folder, you have a lot of identification keys. Jewel box, smooth cockle, Atlantic, a little bit bigger than the Gulf cockle, which is also smooth, or the prickly cockle. The kitten's paw, cat's paw, razor clams. I don't find them too often, but there's a razor. Spiny cockle, you can see the spines on that one, or prickly cockle. Channel duck clam. The sea pen, and shark's eye, formerly the moon snail. The slipper snail, tons of that. Sargassum, we talked about that, how that's a very important brown algae that forms these huge floating mats. We've touched upon that. The lettered olive. There's some blue-green bacteria growing in a tide pool. You also get some purple sulfur bacteria if you see a pink or purple hue. They tend to smell at low tide. In that mangrove tangle, there's some prop roots, and if you go up, crusting lichen, and you can see we even have some mangrove crabs. And then below that, some reindeer moss, different variant of the lichen, different species. So your prop roots are of the red mangrove. Sea whip belonging to the Cnidaria, that's our local corals. They don't form reefs. Don't take them, because corals are protected by Florida law. Possessing them is you can't really collect them. Some of the habitats you'll see, upper left is your beach, obviously. Lower left is that mangrove tide pool. This happens to be full that day. And upper right is the other side of the mangrove tide pool. So that's intracoastal, connected to the beach. There's some sandbars, lower right. These sandbars are, again, temporary. They were formed by a storm, and they're maybe 100 yards offshore from the beach itself, and you can wade out to them. They might not be there when you get there. It depends on the storms and the tides. The willet, upper left, royal tern. And then you have the great blue and the sandwich terns. Then you have the skimmer and the tricolored heron in the lower right. Here's an interesting shot from Compass Key, little Spoil Island beach. The Australian pine, I want you to notice the shallow roots. They're used on the beach to hold sand in place because they make widespread roots, but then when there's a storm, those widespread roots don't run deep enough and they fall over. So that Australian pine died during Tropical Storm Sandy, it blew over. That's why as like I was out there doing it, the counties removed the Australian pines from the beach areas. Sea urchins, we can find them in the shallows a lot of times, sea urchins. Nesting, bald eagle nest. This one was a Fort DeSoto eagle. We've seen them also on Honeymoon Island. We also see them nesting on electricity towers. They've made a good comeback. Eaglet on the right, full size, not wearing adult plumage. It's still a baby. Left, parent. Stingray, they are common in our areas. So when you're in the water, shuffle away. Crusting lichens, I don't see them very often. You got to pull up and look in and on things, and you can sometimes see them. They're a segmented mollusk. They're kind of an anomaly. They're between the annelid and phylum Mollusca. We did unfortunately have a sea turtle wash up on the beach one of the trips, and so you never know what you're going to find laying on the beach. Sea foam. Most sea foam is from phytoplankton, gets all stirred up and then washes ashore. And sometimes this one, lightning whelk egg casing during mating season. So when you do your beach combing, get as many pictures of different shells, different organisms. Note the dune plants. Note the differences between the tidal pool, the mangrove tidal pool, and the beach itself. Substrate, sediment size, whether there's bacteria or not. The color of the water in that mangrove pool, you'll see it stained brownish from the tannins in the mangrove leaves as they rot, where the other tide pool, much clearer because there's no mangrove tannins in it. But it's still a little more cloudy than the Gulf, which is a much larger expanse. So note your habitat differences and enjoy your day at the beach. Multitask. Do the 3 or 4 tasks you have at Fort DeSoto. The 3 would be the beach, the flats at Arrowhead, and the Fort Lady Museum. And then the possible 4th would be the fishing piers to work on your fish. Okay? Have a great day.